The deep black of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Among the distant stars, 3 sleek ships moved with perfect silence. Their hulls gleamed like polished silver, covered in strange blue lights that pulsed like heartbeats. These were Zephyrian vessels, the pride of the hegemony's reconnaissance fleet. Commander Vexthal stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his tall frame casting a shadow across the control panels. His skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and his large black eyes reflected the glow of the screens around him. Forearms moved with practiced grace as he operated different controls at once. The Zephyrians had evolved this way over millions of years, becoming perfect multitaskers. "Commander," called out Junior Technician Rilvana from her station. Her voice carried the musical quality that all Zephyrians possessed. "We have detected an unknown vessel ahead. Distance 40,000 kilometers. Vexthal's eyes narrowed as he studied the main display screen. A crude shape appeared in the center, rotating slowly. It looked nothing like the elegant curves of Zephyrian design. Instead, it was angular and rough, like someone had welded metal plates together without caring about beauty. "Primitive construction," he muttered, walking closer to the screen. "What species does this belong to?" Rilvana's fingers danced across her control panel, pulling up data from the hegemony's vast databases. Thousands of conquered worlds and their technologies were cataloged there. The screen flickered through images of different alien ships, but none matched what they were seeing. "Unknown, Commander. The design does not match any recorded civilization in our databases." Vexthal felt a familiar excitement building in his chest. A new species meant new territory for the hegemony to claim. It meant new resources, new slaves, and new technologies to add to their collection. In his 300 years of service, he had overseen the conquest of 12 different worlds. Each time started exactly like this. "Begin standard scanning procedures," he ordered. "I want to know everything about that vessel. Hull composition, power systems, weapons capability, crew complement, everything." The bridge came alive with activity. Technicians at various stations began activating the ship's advanced sensor arrays. The Zephyrians had spent centuries perfecting their scanning technology. Their quantum sensors could peer through any known shielding. Their neural link interfaces allowed them to map the thoughts and emotions of any crew they encountered. Nothing could hide from a Zephyrian deep scan. "Scanning arrays online," reported Senior Technician Morthron from the weapons station. His third arm moved to activate additional sensors while his other hands continued monitoring the ship's defensive systems. Quantum penetration at maximum power. On the main screen, invisible beams of energy reached out toward the unknown vessel. The Zephyrian scanners were so advanced, they could count individual atoms in a ship's hull from this distance. They could detect the heartbeat of every living thing aboard. They could even analyze the chemical composition of the air inside the vessel. "Initial readings coming in," Rilvana announced. Her eyes were wide with concentration as data flowed across her screens. "The vessel appears to be approximately 800 meters in length. Hull composition shows iron-based alloys with traces of carbon. Very primitive metallurgy." Vexthal nodded with satisfaction. Iron and carbon meant this species had barely begun to understand material science. The Zephyrians had moved beyond such crude elements millions of years ago. Their ships were built from living metal that could reshape itself and repair damage automatically. "Power systems?" he asked. "Chemical combustion for propulsion," came the reply. "Possibly nuclear fission for primary power. The energy signatures are incredibly weak compared to our quantum fusion cores." The commander laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Chemical propulsion? Nuclear fission? What is this, the Stone Age?" He turned to address the entire bridge crew. "It appears we have discovered another backwater civilization that has barely crawled out of its gravity well." The other Zephyrians joined in his laughter. They had seen this so many times before. Species that thought they were advanced because they had discovered fire or built crude rockets. The hegemony had conquered civilizations that could split atoms, manipulate gravity, and even travel between dimensions. This unknown species would be no different. "Continue the deep scan," Vexthal ordered. "I want a complete analysis before we make contact. We need to know if they have anything worth taking before we decide whether to enslave them or simply eliminate them." The scanning process intensified. More powerful beams reached out from the Zephyrian ships, penetrating deeper into the unknown vessel. The quantum sensors began mapping every corridor, every room, every piece of equipment aboard the strange ship. "Commander," Rilavana said, her voice carrying a note of confusion. I am detecting approximately 3,000 life forms aboard the vessel. 3,000? Vexthal was surprised. That was a large crew for such a primitive ship. What species are they? Unknown. The biosignatures are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be carbon-based, oxygen-breathing, with liquid water as their primary solvent. Very standard biological parameters, but the neural activity patterns are unusual. Unusual how? Rilavana paused, studying her readings more carefully. Their brain activity is very complex, much more than we would expect from a primitive species. The neural patterns suggest high intelligence and advanced problem-solving capabilities. Vexthal frowned. This was unexpected. Usually, primitive technology went hand in hand with primitive minds. But intelligence without advanced technology often meant a species had potential. Such races made excellent slaves if properly controlled. What about their weapon systems? He asked. Senior Technician Morthran looked up from his station. Projectile weapons, Commander. Kinetic energy systems that fire solid metal objects using chemical explosives. Some electromagnetic acceleration detected, but primitive railgun technology at best. The bridge crew laughed again. Projectile weapons were what children played with. The Zephyrians could generate plasma fields that would vaporize any solid projectile long before it reached their ships. Their own weapons could manipulate matter at the quantum level, tearing apart the very atoms that made up enemy vessels. Any defensive systems? Vexthal asked. Energy shields of some kind, Morthran replied. But the power levels are laughably weak. Our weapons could punch through them like paper. The commander nodded with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to the standard pattern. A primitive species with crude technology and weak defenses. The only surprise was their apparent intelligence, but that would actually make them more valuable as slaves. Begin preparing the annexation protocols, he ordered. Contact the hegemony and inform them we have discovered a new species suitable for conquest. Estimated resistance level, minimal. As the crew went about their duties, Vexthal studied the image of the unknown vessel on his screen. It looked so crude, so backward compared to the sleek perfection of Zephyrian design. The hull was covered in strange markings that might have been writing, though he could not imagine what such a primitive species would have to say that was worth reading. Still, there was something about the ship that nagged at him. It was not moving, just drifting through space as if it was abandoned, but their sensors clearly detected thousands of life forms aboard. Why would a crew of 3,000 just sit motionless in empty space? Rilavana, he called out. Are you certain about those life sign readings? The junior technician checked her instruments again. Yes, Commander. 3,000 life forms all showing normal vital signs. They appear to be conscious and active. Then why is their ship not moving? Are they damaged? No damage detected, sir. All systems appear to be functional. They are simply inactive. Vexthal felt a small flutter of unease in his stomach. In all his years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this situation felt different, though he could not say exactly what. Continue the deep scan, he ordered. I want to know everything about this species before we make our move. The scanning continued for several hours. Each pass of the Zephyrian sensors revealed more details about the mysterious vessel. But with each new piece of information, the picture became more confusing rather than clearer. Junior Technician Rilavana stared at her displays with growing concern. The readings were not making sense. What had started as a simple analysis of primitive technology was turning into something much more complex and troubling. Commander, she called out, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that had not been there before. I am detecting some anomalies in the hull composition. Vexthal turned from his study of the tactical displays. What kind of anomalies? The metal alloys are not as simple as they first appeared. When I examine them at the molecular level, I can see microscopic structures that appear to be active. Active? What do you mean? Rilavana's four hands moved quickly across her control panels, bringing up detailed images on the main screen. The view zoomed in until individual atoms were visible as tiny glowing spheres. Between them, thread-like structures seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. These structures appear to be repairing microfractures in the hull automatically, but they are not technological devices. They seem to be some kind of engineered biological system. Senior Technician Morthran looked up from his weapons station. Biological? You mean living? Not exactly living. Rilvana replied slowly. But not dead either. It is as if the hull itself has been designed to heal damage over time. I have never seen anything like it in any species database. Vexthal felt that flutter of unease grow stronger in his stomach. Self-repairing materials were not unknown to the Zephyrians, but they required incredibly advanced nanotechnology. For a species that appeared to be using chemical propulsion, such capabilities seemed impossible. Continue the scan, he ordered. Focus on their power systems. Perhaps we are missing something. As the sensors penetrated deeper into the vessel, more strange readings began to appear. The power systems were indeed nuclear-based, but the reactor design was unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. Instead of the clean geometric patterns they expected, the reactor core seemed to follow organic curves and flows. The power plant is generating much more energy than our initial readings suggested, reported engineering specialist Keith Vall from his station. The fusion reaction is somehow contained within a biological matrix. It is as if they have convinced living tissue to control nuclear fire. That is impossible, Vexthal stated flatly. No biological system can survive the temperatures and radiation of nuclear fusion. I agree it should be impossible, Commander. But the readings are clear. The reactor core shows characteristics of both advanced technology and living tissue working together. The commander walked to Kethval's station and studied the readings himself. The energy signatures were indeed much stronger than they had first appeared. More concerning, the power output seemed to be increasing slowly over time, as if the reactor was waking up from a long sleep. What about their computer systems, he asked. This question brought an even more disturbing response. Rilvana had been scanning the vessel's data processing centers, expecting to find crude electronic circuits or perhaps early quantum processors. What she found instead defied all logical understanding. Commander, their computer systems appear to be based on crystallized neural tissue. The processing cores show the same brainwave patterns as the living crew members, but accelerated by several orders of magnitude. Vexthal felt a chill run through his body. Are you saying their computers are alive? Not alive in the traditional sense, but they appear to think. The data processing speed is far beyond anything we have ever encountered. Our most advanced quantum computers would seem primitive by comparison. That cannot be correct, the commander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Run the scan again. Check for sensor malfunctions. Rilvana did as ordered, but the results remained the same. If anything, the repeated scans revealed even more troubling details. The ship's communication arrays were not simple metal antennas, but complex organic structures that seemed to bend space around them. The weapon systems showed integration between mechanical and biological components that should have been impossible. Commander, called out Navigation Officer Srikstan from his station, I am detecting unusual gravitational fluctuations around the target vessel. What kind of fluctuations? The space around their ship appears to be folded somehow. Certain sections of the vessel are not where they appear to be. It is as if portions of the ship exist in dimensions that our sensors cannot fully penetrate. Vexthal felt the first real stirrings of fear. Dimensional manipulation was among the most advanced technologies known to the Zephyrians. They had encountered only 3 species in their entire history that had mastered such capabilities, and all 3 had required massive military campaigns to defeat. Are you certain of these readings? He asked. Yes, Commander. The dimensional distortions are subtle but definitely present. This ship is much larger than it appears to be. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If this supposedly primitive species had mastered dimensional technology, then everything they thought they knew about them was wrong. What about their crew? Vexthal asked. Have you been able to get detailed scans of the life forms aboard? Rilvana shook her head. That is another anomaly, Commander. Our neural link interfaces are having difficulty penetrating their minds. Their thought patterns are shielded somehow. I can detect that they are conscious and active, but I cannot read their emotions or intentions the way we normally can. This was perhaps the most troubling news yet. The Zephyrian neural scanners had never failed to penetrate an organic mind before. They could read the thoughts of any carbon-based life form, regardless of intelligence or technology level. The fact that this species could somehow block such scans suggested mental capabilities far beyond the primitive level they had assumed. Sir, Engineering Specialist Kethval spoke up hesitantly. There is something else. The reactor signatures are continuing to increase. The vessel appears to be powering up from what may have been a standby mode. Vexthal rushed back to the main display screen. The image of the unknown vessel looked the same as before, but now he could see subtle energy patterns flickering beneath its hull. What had appeared to be a dormant ship was slowly coming to life. "How long until they reach full power?" he asked. "Unknown, sir, but at the current rate of increase, their power output will exceed our own within approximately 1 hour." The commander felt sweat begin to form on his pale blue skin. A species that could build ships more powerful than Zephyrian vessels was not primitive at all. They were potentially the most dangerous enemy the hegemony had ever encountered. "Weapon status," he called out to Morthran. "All systems ready, Commander. Plasma cannons charged and targeting systems locked onto the unknown vessel. Power up defensive screens to maximum. Be ready to engage the moment I give the order." As the crew scrambled to prepare for potential combat, Vexthal stared at the alien ship on his screen. Its crude, angular appearance now seemed less like primitive construction and more like deliberate deception. What else about this species had they misjudged? "Commander," Rilvana said urgently, "the target vessel's communication array is activating. They are powering up to transmit. Can you intercept their signal?" "I am trying, sir, but their transmission method is unlike anything we have seen. They appear to be using quantum entanglement combined with dimensional folding to send messages instantaneously across vast distances." Vexthal realized with growing horror that this unknown species was not just advanced in 1 or 2 areas. They had mastered technologies that even the mighty Zephyrian hegemony considered cutting edge. And they had been scanning them for hours, learning everything about Zephyrian capabilities while revealing almost nothing about themselves. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." The main screen flickered and changed to show the bridge of the alien ship. What Vexthal saw there made his worst fears seem like pleasant dreams compared to the reality he now faced. The main screen of the Zephyrian flagship flickered and stabilized, revealing the interior of the unknown vessel. What Commander Vexthal saw made him take an involuntary step backward. The bridge of the alien ship was a fusion of organic curves and technological precision that defied everything he thought he knew about engineering. Walls that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat stretched between control stations that appeared to have grown rather than been built. Conduits of flowing light moved beneath translucent surfaces like veins carrying liquid energy throughout the ship. But it was the crew that truly disturbed him. The aliens were smaller than Zephyrians with only 2 arms each, but they moved with a fluid confidence that spoke of complete mastery over their environment. Their skin tones varied from pale to dark brown, and their hair came in different colors and textures. Most unsettling of all, their eyes held an intelligence that seemed to look right through the transmission and into his very soul. At the center of the bridge stood what was clearly the commanding officer. She was a female of the species with short dark hair and eyes the color of earth after rain. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that made Vexthal's 400 years of military experience feel like childhood games. "Unknown vessels," the female said in perfect Zephyrian language, though her mouth movements suggested she was speaking her own tongue and some kind of universal translator was at work. "You have been conducting unauthorized scans of this vessel for the past 6 hours. You have 30 seconds to withdraw to a safe distance before defensive measures are authorized." Vexthal felt his throat go dry. Not only had they detected the scans, but they had been counting the exact time. Even more troubling, they spoke of defensive measures with the casual confidence of a species that had faced such situations many times before. "This is Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian hegemony," he managed to say, his voice not quite as steady as he would have liked. "We were conducting routine exploration scans. We meant no hostile intent." The human female smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Indomitable. Commander Vexthal, your scans have penetrated our hull integrity, mapped our internal systems, and attempted to breach our crew's mental privacy. In human space, such actions are considered acts of war." As she spoke, the ship around her continued to wake up. Lights that had been dim began to brighten with organic warmth. Surfaces that had appeared inactive started to show complex patterns of energy flow. The transformation was like watching a sleeping giant slowly open its eyes. 20 seconds, Captain Chen said calmly. Vexthal's mind raced. Everything about this situation was wrong. The humans spoke of their space as if they controlled territory, implying they were not just a single ship but part of a larger civilization. They had detected scans that should have been undetectable. Most concerning of all, they were giving him an ultimatum with the quiet confidence of a species that knew it could back up its threats. "Captain Chen," he said, trying to buy time while his tactical officer analyzed the increasing energy readings from the human ship. "Perhaps we can discuss this situation. The Zephyrian hegemony is always interested in establishing diplomatic relations with new species." 10 seconds, she replied, ignoring his words completely. Behind her, the human crew moved with practiced efficiency. Their control stations were responding to touches that seemed more like caresses than button presses. The ship itself appeared to be anticipating their needs, displays changing before hands reached for them, systems activating at the mere approach of their operators. "Commander," Senior Technician Morthran whispered urgently from his weapon station. "Their energy output has increased by 3,000% in the last minute. Whatever they are powering up, it is far beyond our defensive capabilities." Vexthal felt sweat dripping from his pale blue skin. In 600 years of Zephyrian expansion, no species had ever given them an ultimatum. The hegemony was always the one making demands, always the one in control of first contact situations. 5 seconds, Captain Chen said. "Wait," Vexthal called out desperately. "We will withdraw." "We will withdraw immediately." The human captain raised one hand and her crew froze in place. The energy buildup continued, but whatever they had been preparing to do was held in check by her gesture. "You have made a wise choice, Commander," she said. "However, your scans have already provided us with detailed information about your technology and capabilities. Our databases now contain complete specifications for your ships, weapons, and defensive systems." The blood in Vexthal's veins turned to ice. While they had been scanning the humans had been scanning them in return. But how is that possible? Their sensors had detected no scanning beams from the human vessel. "Furthermore," Captain Chen continued, "your scan data and the location of this encounter have been transmitted to Earth Defense Command. They will be very interested to learn about your civilization and its methods of routine exploration." Navigation Officer Shrixton looked up from his station with panic in his large black eyes. "Commander, I am detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout this region of space. Something very large is manipulating space-time itself." On the main screen, Captain Chen's smile became genuinely warm for the first time. "Ah, that would be the arrival of the Second Fleet. We were conducting a training exercise when you appeared. I do hope your ships are capable of faster-than-light travel, Commander. You will want to be well away from here before Admiral Rodriguez arrives." As if summoned by her words, space itself began to twist and fold around the human ship. Reality bent like heated metal, and through the distortions came shapes that made Vexthal's worst nightmares seem pleasant. Dozens of vessels emerged from folded space, each one larger and more menacing than the last. The ships that appeared were clearly of the same species as the Indomitable, but they represented a level of technological advancement that made the Zephyrian fleet look like children's toys. Hulls that seemed to be made of liquid starlight shifted and flowed as they moved. Weapons arrays that defied geometric logic tracked the Zephyrian vessels with predatory precision. "Commander," Weapons Specialist Morthran reported in a voice that cracked with fear, "each of those ships is generating enough power to destroy a small moon. There are 47 of them. We are outnumbered and outgunned by a factor that our computers cannot calculate." The largest of the human ships was a massive cathedral of metal and energy that seemed to dwarf everything around it. From its hull, a voice spoke in tones that carried the authority of absolute power. "This is Admiral Maria Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force Second Fleet. Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in human space and have conducted hostile scans against one of our ships. You have 60 seconds to provide identification and explanation for your presence here." Vexthal realized that Captain Chen had been giving him a chance to leave peacefully. This Admiral Rodriguez sounded far less inclined toward mercy. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we will withdraw immediately. We meant no harm." The human captain nodded slowly. "I believe you, Commander. But intentions matter less than actions. Your people have much to learn about how humans conduct first contact. I suggest you take that lesson back to your hegemony." "All ships," Vexthal ordered, his pride crushed but his survival instincts fully engaged. "Full retreat. Maximum speed. Exit this system immediately." As the Zephyrian ships began to turn away, their engines straining to achieve maximum velocity, Captain Chen's voice followed them. Commander Vexthal, one final piece of advice. The next time you encounter a human ship, I suggest you try saying hello instead of conducting unauthorized scans. We are usually quite friendly when approached with respect. The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. Behind them, the human fleet remained in perfect formation, their massive ships radiating power that could have vaporized the entire Zephyrian expedition without effort. As they fled toward the edge of the system, Vexthal stared at the sensor readings that showed the true scope of what they had encountered. The humans had not just detected their scans, they had turned the scanning process against them, learning everything about Zephyrian technology while revealing almost nothing about their own capabilities. Worst of all, this had clearly been just a small patrol ship conducting a training exercise. If this was what humans considered routine military activity, what would their actual war fleets be capable of? For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vexthal began to compose a report recommending that the hegemony avoid contact with a newly discovered species at all costs. As the Zephyrian ships continued their retreat, Commander Vexthal found himself unable to stop staring at the sensor readings. The human fleet remained in perfect formation behind them, making no move to pursue but clearly tracking their every movement. The message was clear. They could follow if they chose to, and there would be nothing the Zephyrians could do to stop them. "Commander," Junior Technician Rilvana called out, her voice shaking slightly. "The humans are maintaining an open communication channel. Captain Chen is requesting permission to speak with you again." Vexthal felt every instinct screaming at him to cut all communication and flee as fast as possible. But something in the human captain's tone during their previous exchange suggested that refusing might be more dangerous than listening. She had spared them once already. "Open the channel," he ordered reluctantly. The main screen flickered back to life, once again showing the bridge of the human vessel Indomitable. Captain Chen appeared unchanged, but now Vexthal could see more details of her ship's interior. What he had initially taken for organic architecture was clearly something far more sophisticated. The walls seemed to respond to the crew's presence, reshaping themselves to provide optimal working conditions for each individual. The control stations were not just grown, but were actively evolving, adapting to the specific needs and preferences of their operators. This was not merely advanced technology. It was something entirely beyond Zephyrian understanding. "Commander Vexthal," Captain Chen began, her voice carrying a tone of patient instruction. "I realize our first contact did not proceed as you expected. Before you return to your people, I thought it might be helpful to provide some context about what you have encountered here today." "Context?" Vexthal managed to ask. "Yes. You see, the Indomitable is what we humans call a patrol vessel. It is considered outdated by current Earth Defense Force standards. We use ships like this for routine border monitoring and training exercises for new recruits." The words hit Vexthal like physical blows. If this terrifyingly advanced vessel was considered outdated, what did current human military technology look like? Captain Chen seemed to read his thoughts. "I can see you are concerned, Commander. Perhaps I should explain a bit about how humans approach ship design. You were scanning our hull composition earlier, so you may have noticed some unusual properties." "The self-repairing materials?" Vexthal said weakly. "Exactly. But that is just the beginning. You see, humans do not simply build ships, Commander. We birth them." On the screen behind Captain Chen, the camera view pulled back to show more of the bridge. What Vexthal saw made his understanding of technology crumble completely. The ship's surfaces were not just alive. They were thinking. Patterns of light flowed through the walls like neural networks, processing information and making decisions at speeds that defied comprehension. "Every human vessel is a hybrid of organic intelligence and technological precision," Captain Chen continued. "The Indomitable has been my partner for 15 years. She learns, she adapts, she grows stronger with every encounter. Your scans today were quite educational for her." "Educational?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Oh yes. While you were analyzing our technology, the Indomitable was analyzing yours. She has now incorporated improvements based on your quantum sensor arrays and your plasma generation systems. Tomorrow she will be more advanced than she was today, thanks to your generous contribution." Vexthal felt the universe spinning around him. The humans had not just detected their scans, they had used them as a learning opportunity, Every piece of advanced Zephyrian technology had been absorbed, understood, and improved upon in real time. But that is not the most important thing you should understand, Captain Chen continued. What you really need to know about humans is why we are out here in the first place. The camera view shifted again, this time showing a wall display that contained images and data about dozens of different alien species. Vexthal recognized some of them from hegemony databases, but others were completely unknown. Earth has been visited by 17 different alien civilizations over the past century, Captain Chen explained. Each one arrived with the same assumption you made today. They saw a primitive species that could be easily conquered or eliminated. They were all wrong. As she spoke, the images on the wall began to move, showing space battles of incredible scale and violence. Human ships, clearly less advanced than their opponents, engaged in desperate combat against overwhelming odds. But in every case, the humans found ways to win. The first visitors were the Kralix Dominion, Captain Chen said, her voice taking on a darker tone. They attempted to harvest our planet for its resources. We had barely achieved nuclear technology at the time. By any reasonable calculation, we should have been wiped out within days. The display showed images of strange insectoid ships bombarding Earth's cities. But then the perspective changed, showing humans adapting their primitive rockets to carry devastating payloads directly into the alien vessels' weak points. Instead, we captured their ships, learned their technology, and sent the survivors home with a message for their empire. The message was simple: Earth is protected. Stay away. Vexthal watched in growing horror as the display showed battle after battle. Each time the attacking aliens possessed superior technology. Each time, the humans found ways to not just survive but to capture enemy vessels and incorporate their weapons and defenses into human designs. The second visitors were the hegemony of thoughts, Captain Chen continued. They were telepathic beings who believed they could simply take control of human minds and use us as slaves. They discovered that human consciousness is rather more complex than they anticipated. The images showed human soldiers fighting while wearing strange helmets that seemed to be made from alien technology. As the battle progressed, it became clear that the humans had not only resisted the mental control, but had turned it back on their attackers. By the time the third invasion attempt occurred, we had learned to anticipate them, Captain Chen said. The Vorthan Empire brought dimensional manipulation technology. They thought they could phase their ships out of normal space and attack us from higher dimensions. The display now showed human vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, pursuing enemies through folded space with relentless efficiency. You see, Commander, humans have a very particular approach to conflict. We do not just fight wars. We collect them. Every species that has ever attacked Earth has taught us something new. Every weapon used against us has been improved and incorporated into our own arsenal. Thal realized with mounting dread that the strange hybrid technology he had observed was not the result of human innovation alone. It was the accumulated knowledge of 17 different alien civilizations, all filtered through human ingenuity and combined into something far more dangerous than the sum of its parts. Your people's quantum scanning technology is quite impressive, Captain Chen said conversationally. We had been working on similar systems, but your approach to dimensional folding within the sensor matrix is elegant. The Indomitable estimates she can improve our scanning range by approximately 300% using your techniques. Please, Vexthal said, though he was not sure what he was asking for. The most important lesson from all of this, Commander, is that humans view first contact as an opportunity for mutual benefit. When approached with respect and peaceful intentions, we are quite friendly. When approached with hostility or attempts at conquest, we are very good students. The display behind her now showed current human technology, ships that seemed to be built from crystallized starlight, weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself, defenses that existed partially outside of normal space-time. The data from your ships has already been transmitted to our research divisions on Earth, Captain Chen said. Within a month, our engineers will have developed improvements to our existing systems based on your plasma generation techniques and your faster-than-light drive configurations. They will be incorporated into our next generation of vessels. She paused, letting the implications sink in completely. So you see, Commander, your unauthorized scans today have not only revealed human capabilities to your people, they have also made humanity more powerful than we were this morning. I hope your hegemony finds that educational. The communication ended with a soft click that seemed to echo through the Zephyrian bridge like the closing of a tomb. Commander Vexthal stood in stunned silence, staring at the now blank main screen while his crew worked frantically at their stations to maintain maximum retreat speed. "Commander," Navigation Officer Srixton reported with barely controlled panic in his voice. "The human fleet is maintaining position at the edge of our sensor range. They are not pursuing, but they are tracking our exact course and speed." "How is that possible?" Vexthal asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "We are beyond the range of any known scanning technology." "Sir," engineering specialist Kethaval spoke up from his station, "I believe they may have used our own quantum sensor pulse as a carrier wave to embed tracking devices in our ship's systems. Every time we pinged their vessel, they sent information back through the same channel." The full scope of their mistake was becoming clear. The humans had not just passively endured the Zephyrian scans. They had used each scanning pulse as an opportunity to infiltrate Zephyrian systems, learning everything about their technology while simultaneously planting tracking devices and who knew what else. "Can we purge the foreign code from our systems?" Vexthal asked desperately. Kethaval worked frantically at his controls for several minutes before looking up with defeat written across his pale blue features. "No, sir. The infiltration code appears to be self-repairing and is integrated at the quantum level. Any attempt to remove it might damage our core systems permanently." "So they can track us indefinitely?" "It appears so, Commander." Vexthal felt the weight of his failures crushing down upon him. In a single day, he had not only discovered that the Zephyrian hegemony was not the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, but he had also potentially compromised the security of the entire empire. The humans now knew the location of Zephyrian space and possessed detailed information about their technology and capabilities. "Sir," Junior Technician Rilvana called out urgently, "I am detecting another transmission from the human fleet. This one is not directed at us." "Where is it going?" "Unknown, sir. But the signal is using the same dimensional folding techniques we observed earlier. They appear to be communicating instantaneously across galactic distances." Vexthal realized with growing horror that the humans were reporting this encounter to their home worlds in real time. Every detail of the Zephyrian fleet's composition, technology, and capabilities was being transmitted to human military commanders who would use that information to prepare for future encounters. "Commander," Senior Technician Morthran said quietly, "what do we tell the Hegemony Council when we return?" It was the question Vexthal had been dreading. How could he possibly explain that he had led the reconnaissance fleet into a first contact situation that had resulted in complete intelligence failure? How could he report that a species the hegemony had assumed was primitive had demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond their own? "The truth," he said finally. "We tell them exactly what happened here. But sir, if we report that humans are more advanced than us, the Council might decide to launch a preemptive strike before they become an even greater threat." Vexthal turned to look at his weapons officer with an expression of disbelief. "Morthran, did you not witness what just occurred? A single human patrol ship rendered our entire fleet helpless without firing a shot. Their reinforcement fleet demonstrated power levels that exceed our most optimistic projections for our own military development over the next 1,000 years. He gestured toward the sensor displays that still showed the human fleet maintaining its distant watch over their retreat. Any attack on human space would not be a preemptive strike. It would be suicide. And based on what Captain Chen told us about human history, it would also be exactly the wrong approach." The bridge fell silent as the crew contemplated the implications. Everything they had believed about Zephyrian superiority had been shattered in a few hours of contact with a species that treated survival as an art form. "What do you recommend, Commander?" Rilvana asked quietly. Vexthal walked to his command station and began composing his report to the Hegemony Council. Every word would need to be chosen carefully to convey the magnitude of what they had discovered without causing panic or triggering a catastrophic military response. "I am going to recommend that the hegemony immediately cease all expansion activities in this region of the galaxy," he said as he typed. "Furthermore, I will suggest that we establish a buffer zone of at least 1,000 light-years between human space and any Zephyrian territories." 1,000 light-years? Morthran gasped. That would require abandoning dozens of conquered worlds. "Those worlds are worthless if defending them brings us into conflict with humanity. Vexthal replied grimly. Based on what we have observed, humans view territorial expansion by potentially hostile species as a direct threat. Given their demonstrated ability to learn and adapt from every conflict, any confrontation with them would only make them stronger while making us weaker. As he continued writing his report, Vexthal found himself returning again and again to Captain Chen's casual mention that the Indomitable was considered outdated. If that terrifying fusion of living technology and military precision was obsolete by human standards, what did their current military capabilities look like? Sir, Srixton reported from the navigation station, we have crossed the boundary of what the humans designated as their space. The tracking signals are still active, but they are no longer following us. Vexthal allowed himself a small sigh of relief. At least the humans appeared to be willing to let them leave, rather than pursuing them back to Zephyrian territory. It was another indication that Captain Chen had been sincere about humanity's preference for peaceful first contact, when approached with respect. Commander, Rilvana said thoughtfully, do you think they planned this entire encounter? What do you mean? Think about it, sir. They were conducting a training exercise in a remote location near the edge of their space. They had a fleet of advanced warships nearby, but out of sensor range. When we arrived and began scanning, they allowed us to continue for hours while they gathered intelligence about our capabilities. Then they demonstrated their own technology in a way that would ensure we returned home with a clear understanding of human power. Vexthal considered the possibility. It would explain why the humans had seemed so well prepared for first contact with an unknown species. It would also suggest a level of strategic thinking that was even more troubling than their technological capabilities. You may be correct, he admitted. If so, it indicates that humans have been preparing for contact with new alien species for some time. They may already know about the hegemony and other galactic civilizations. The thought sent chills through the entire bridge crew. If humans had been studying galactic politics while remaining hidden from other species, they might know far more about Zephyrian weaknesses than anyone had realized. Complete your reports, Vexthal ordered his crew. Include every detail, no matter how small. The Council needs to understand exactly what we encountered out here. As the Zephyrian ships continued their long journey home, the universe around them seemed different somehow. They had left hegemony space believing themselves to be representatives of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They were returning with the knowledge that somewhere in the vast darkness, a species existed that had turned survival itself into a form of warfare. Commander, Rilvana said as she finished her technical analysis report, what do you think will happen now? Vexthal looked out at the stars ahead of them, somewhere among which lay the hegemony's homeworlds and the council chambers where his report would be read and debated. I do not know, he answered honestly, but I hope the Council is wise enough to heed our warnings. Because if they are not, I fear we may have just witnessed the last peaceful contact between humans and the Zephyrian hegemony. In the depths of space behind them, the human fleet maintained its watch, patient and ready. And somewhere in the vast network of human civilization, engineers and tacticians were already at work, incorporating Zephyrian technology into designs that would make tomorrow's human ships even more formidable than today's. The galaxy had become a much more dangerous place, and the Zephyrian hegemony was no longer at the top of the food chain. They had scanned a human battleship and discovered that in the endless struggle for survival, humanity had long ago stopped being prey and had become something far more terrifying. They had become teachers, and the lesson they taught was always the same. In a universe full of predators, the most dangerous species is the one that learns from every attempt to destroy it.